Well, Louise, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I am so happy to have you here. I know this has been a long time in the making, getting this podcast episode recorded, but I'm so thrilled we finally got the chance to do this. Before we get started, why don't I just hand over to you so you can introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Henriette. It's such a pleasure to be here talking to you today. So yeah, my name is Louise Miller and I help busy, successful, overwhelmed business owners to get stuff done with less stress and with more ease. So I work with people who are really brilliant at having loads of ideas, but are not always that great at making them happen. So I help them get those ideas kind of out of their notebooks, out of their heads, and to really land them in reality so that they can actually make the impact that they want to be making. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I work in a few different ways. I've got some courses that kind of help people lay the foundations to get stuff done, sort their to-do lists out, all of that kind of stuff. And then I work with people one-to-one so that they can get my eyes, my logical brain on their goals and what's going on for them. And I also run the Make It Happen Club, which is a fairly new thing, and I'm absolutely loving it. So that is where I'm creating space for people to come and just really get clear on their vision and their goals, reconnect with them regularly, plan regularly, so that they can get their priorities straight. And again, just make the impact that they're here to make, because those ideas are doing no one any good stuck in people's heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about that is it works very much hand in hand with what I do. And I always say that, you know, for us as entrepreneurs, as human beings, if we want something really badly, that goal, that dream that we kind of see in the future, we find that, you know, it must be complicated to reach that goal. It must be complicated to reach that dream. So we start overcomplicating everything, which means you get overwhelmed, which means you're stretching yourself too thin, you can't prioritize, you can't organize, and you're not getting the results in turn. And then you feel like this dream is just seeming to go further and further in the distance rather than working towards it, to getting it closer, which excites me so much, because that's what we're going to talk about today in all of your expertise and skills, laying it out on the table. But before we go into that, talk to us a little bit about your story. How did you get started in this, and how has that evolved to where you are now?
Yeah, great. Okay, so I've been doing this or running my own business for 4 years now. So if I rewind back 4 or 5 years ago, I was working as a team leader in higher education, absolutely stressed out of my mind, completely overwhelmed, had way too much going on, managing a team of 5 people. I was the go-to person. You know that whole saying, if you want something doing, give it to a busy person. Yeah, that was me. And I was feeling very responsible for a lot of things, and it was starting to take its toll. And it actually ended up culminating in work-related stress and anxiety, which wasn't very much fun. And I can just remember really, really clearly, I was sitting at my desk one day with all of these emails pinging at me, surrounded by piles of stuff, feeling completely and utterly overwhelmed. And I just stood up to go and get a drink, to go and get a glass of water from the kitchen, which was like 15 paces away. And I got halfway there and I just had this real kind of moment of clarity where little voice in my head popped up and said, Louise, why are you always rushing around trying to get everything done? And just that one thought suddenly made everything feel so much clearer, because I suddenly realized no one at any point was going to say, you can stop now, you've finished. So the faster I was going to try and get everything done, the more stuff was flying at me. So that kind of light bulb moment was the real pivotal moment that made me think, yeah, something's got to change. You know, that and the health issues I was facing, I was medicated at that point to be able to be at work. You know, I needed to be on medication for the stress. And I thought, this is not where I want to be. If it's a choice between that and just walking away, I choose walking away. So I actually handed my notice in with not really much of a clue about what was going to happen next. But I had a 3 months notice period, thankfully. And in that 3 months, I basically decided to set up as a VA. So I started out working as a virtual assistant and loved it. But it very quickly became apparent that there was more that I wanted to be doing. You know, I loved supporting other people with their businesses, but I knew that I wanted to be building my own business where I was able to share what I love to do and talk about in a way that I wanted to. So that I kind of was starting to evolve. I think I'd probably only been VAing about 9 months when I realised this. The VA was like, it ended up being a bit of a transition period really for me. And I started out just doing mentoring with people on their productivity, started creating some courses, and it's all kind of shifted and evolved from there to land where I am now, which just feels like I've absolutely nailed the thing that I am here to do, and I absolutely blooming love it. And I've not had any kind of the symptoms of stress or anxiety or anything since I walked out the door of that organisation, 4 years ago.
It's lovely to hear your story, because I can relate to some of it from my experience as well. But in a way, it just shows that, what you experience, you literally walk the walk and talk the talk, but you've used that point in your life as a positive thing in order to, decide, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And you've used that aspect now to be a person to help other people who possibly are going through similar things.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love to hear that story, because it's so motivational for so many people to realize that whatever point you are stuck with in your life right now, you don't have to stay there if you don't want to. There's always another route. There's always a decision you can make. And I think that's very important, is to realize that you and you alone can make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, for me, it took the health issue, and it actually needed my doctor to sign me off work. She had to take that decision out of my hands, because I just couldn't. I was feeling like I need to be there because they need me. And she was like, no, you need to stay home and rest. I don't want other people to be getting to that state before they actually end up doing what they need for themselves, So it's a cautionary tale, but with a happy ending. And actually, there's a lot of what I learned when I had that light bulb moment that I was describing that is now forming part of my philosophy in the way that I speak about what I do now. So yeah, it's been formative in more ways than one.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start talking about productivity. Let's talk about the definition of productivity. And I've spoken about this myself with my audience, with my clients, but I'd love to hear your kind of thought about the definition really of productivity and what it means to you.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a challenging thing, really. I call myself a productivity mentor, for want of a better definition, and I really don't like the word productivity, so we have a bit of a problem. I can't think of a better word. If anyone has any suggestions, please do share. But when I think of the word productivity, it makes me think of a man in a grey suit pointing at a graph. It feels very kind of dry and there's an energy behind it that feels very pushing and striving and grr that I really don't subscribe to. And again, when we say productivity, most people will think about trying to get more done in less time. I don't like that. So the definition that I've come up with, which, I absolutely love, is, that being productive and productivity is about doing what's important as efficiently as possible to create space for what we love. So it's not about doing more in less time, because you could carry on doing more and more and more stuff that actually isn't that important. It's about figuring out what's important, doing that as efficiently as you can. So trying to focus as best you can, make the best of your energy, make the best of your time, but not so that you can then do more stuff, but so you can create space to live a really rich and fulfilling life.
Yeah. I love that definition, and it goes a little bit hand in hand as to how I feel about to-do lists.
Yeah.
I went through a stage where my to-do lists were Post-its, and honestly, I had Post-its on my wall, all over my computer screen, and it was crazy. And then I realized that all of these Post-its are just accumulating. I'm not taking anything down. And I was wondering, what was the reason behind that? And it's exactly what you just said about productivity. And when I had that moment of epiphany, I was like, oh, and all the Post-its came down. And then everything just started making more sense.
Yeah, it's funny. And that's very common, people with Post-its everywhere and a bazillion notebooks and things. It's something I help people with a lot in my work. I have a course all around to-do lists. It's a massive area. But yeah, it's, whenever I do a speaking engagement, if I'm doing a talk or something, one of the first questions I ask is, put your hand up if you think your to-do list is never ending. And everyone puts their hands up. And then I have to tell them that they're right. Their to-do list is never ending. There is never going to be an end point, which brings us back to the realization I had in my last job, where no one is ever going to say that you're finished. We have to make that call for ourselves. We have to be okay with what we can get done, what we want to get done in a day, celebrate that, and then go and chill out without feeling really guilty. And again, that's where your post-it notes are probably stressing you out, because they were always in your eye line.
Exactly. And that was it. And I think the other thing that I quickly learned after that is when I took down all the post-it notes and all those things that constantly distracting me, because let's face it, they were a distraction. But then the other thing that I quickly learned after that is kind of my zone of energy when I was being productive. And I kind of figured out that first thing in the morning is my energy zone is skyrocketing, and that's when I'm at my best in order to be really productive. But then also there were moments in time where, as an example, I had to write an email to somebody, or I had to set up an email sequence, and I just didn't feel like doing it. And then I was thinking, what's wrong with me? How come I don't feel that I wanted to do it? And I thought, you know what, I'd rather feel that I can go and sit for an hour and read my book. And then I thought, why don't I just do it? I don't have to talk to anybody to get permission to do that. I don't feel like writing the email sequence now. I'm going to go sit for an hour and read my book. And then that kind of vibration, that kind of energy made me so much better then, because after that hour of reading my book, then I felt like, now I can write the emails. And then I felt more productive doing it. But I think it was a little bit to do with the mindset there of making that shift and realizing that I can give myself permission to do the things when I want to do them.
Absolutely. And that's some ninja skills you've got going on there. Definitely. You know, I often talk about productivity as being the psychological kind of games that we play with ourselves. Yes. But that what you've just described is a really great example, because so many people will just sit and waste that hour because they don't feel like doing what they want to be doing. So they're just bouncing around websites and scrolling social media, and then they're feeling guilty, and then they get into this big old spiral that is not particularly helpful or motivating. So taking that choice, like, I'm just going to remove myself completely and go and do something to top me back up, to give me the nourishment that I want, so I can come back to it and feeling really focused and motivated. Awesome. You know, that's why we run our own businesses, so we can make those decisions for ourselves.
Exactly. And it works. It works. So number one, you don't have to feel guilty about it. There's a very good reason why you feel like that at that moment in time. And there's a very good action that you need to take at that moment in time. Go and do what you want to do. If it's to go for a coffee, to go and meet somebody for lunch, if you can these days. But you know, those kind of things, if that's what you want to do, then go and do that. And then when you come back, you'll find that you're at your most productive. So I think the other question is you said that it's important to take a holistic approach as well. What is the holistic approach, and what is the risk factor?
Yeah, so what I see quite often, and again, I think for those of us who've come out of a normal 9-to-5 kind of environment, we're very used to separating out work from everything else that's going on in our lives. And I've seen time and time again that when people are running their own businesses and they're still trying to keep those two things separate, it really doesn't help them. Because especially when you're running your own business, you're so invested in it. There's so much of you that is invested in it that, of course, it's going to have an impact on your personal life. And of course, your personal life is going to have an impact on your business. So if we can take a holistic approach to how we're thinking about our productivity, suddenly everything flows a lot more easily. And, you know, whenever I have this conversation with people, it's like, again, it's like another light bulb kind of switching on, and they realize, oh yeah, I was speaking to somebody a while ago who was moving house, not just moving house, moving from the south coast to way up north in the UK. And she just hadn't considered the fact that that would mean she couldn't show up for her business in the way that she normally would. And she was giving herself a really, really hard time. And then when we were talking it through, suddenly she was like, oh yes, maybe I should have thought, you know, that the two things would have an impact on each other. And it works the other way around as well. You know, if you're launching something in your business, might be a good idea to try and time that at a time when there isn't something massive going on. You know, if you've got kids who are taking exams or something, you're not going to want to have your energy tied up in this massive launch for your business. You want to be able to give some of that to your kids, for example. So yeah, taking that holistic approach is really, really important, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually had somebody who asked me a question a couple of weeks ago, and it is very much to do with that holistic approach. She asked me if I work over weekends. And I said to her, no, Saturdays and Sundays is my time with my family. So I only work during the week. And she said, but what if you get a really great opportunity that takes place over a weekend. And I said, well, that depends then. If I get an invitation to go and do a speaking event, you know, and it's an opportunity I can't miss, and they say, hey, can you come out on a Saturday, these are the hours, and do this event? I'll look at my calendar and I'll go, yeah, I've got nothing planned for that day. Of course I'll do it. It's an opportunity. But if they come to me and say, hey, can you come on the Sunday? This is the time of the event. This is what we're going to do. And I look at my calendar and I go, actually, that is the day of my birthday. I'm going to spend that time with my family. So I'm afraid I can't accept the opportunity. It depends. And it's exactly what you said. I know this is a simple example, but it just is how simple it is. Having that holistic approach and just seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Absolutely. Putting it all together. It's as easy as that. Don't overcomplicate it. But bring the two together. Your life and your business needs to work hand in hand. They really need to fit together.
They do. Yeah, totally. And yeah, that again is the joy of us running our own businesses, is that we can design it to work for us. So looking at it all together. And it's funny, it's one of the things that people comment on really often in their work with me. I mean, in the club that I've created, the Make It Happen Club, whenever we have a monthly planning session, I will say, bring not just what's going on in your business, what's going on in your life. And the feedback I get is always, oh yeah, that was so helpful, because now I've got a really realistic idea of what I can do that takes everything into consideration. And it really does, again, it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
Suddenly things feel possible because you've considered the whole picture.
And I think in particular for families with children, I mean, because we are women in business, you know, we put our kids first, and then you kind of have that almost anxiety about, what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize my kids here, or do I prioritize my business here? And I think with what the work that you're doing, you kind of say, well, we prioritize both at the same time in a neat, constructed way, where you don't have to feel that one is getting the lack of your attention where the other one is getting all the attention. And I think that's what makes you amazing in what you're doing, because you just bring to light how things can fit together. In particular for families, I think that's really important for us as women and mothers. It's hard to feel, you know, that kind of balance of what we need to prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, full disclosure, I don't have kids, so I can't speak from firsthand experience of having a family. But I see it in my clients, you know, it's really hard. And sometimes as well, just the encouragement to look at it all together doesn't necessarily mean you've got to drop something that you were planning to do. It might just mean that you need to ask for some support.
Yeah.
And flagging that up early enough means you've got plenty of time and space to look for that support, so that you can go and do what you want to do. And it doesn't suddenly end up being tomorrow and you haven't thought it through, you know. So it's forward thinking as well.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about productivity, there is so many things that I sometimes find. We were talking about the to-do list that never ends.
Yeah.
However, there is also the part where there's certain things that you've got to let go of, and being open to letting go of certain things. What is your comment about that, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways of thinking about that, really. So when it comes to letting, a kind of big picture thing that I think people need to let go of when it comes to productivity is actually the idea that there's a magic bullet out there that's going to solve all of their problems. You know, a lot of us wish that there was for a lot of things that we're trying to achieve, but there really isn't. So, you know, letting go of that idea that there's a perfect solution out there somewhere, because, you know, there's a massive industry around planners and apps and all of these things that are telling us that they're going to make us really productive. But if we can let go of the expectation that the solution is coming from out there, and instead go inward and just think, okay, I need to just figure out what works for me, and come from that place, that is much more sustainable as a way of figuring out what works for you, because you know yourself best. And then once you've got that self-awareness, that's where you can then go and look for the tools that are actually going to support you. So it's just kind of flipping that around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then on a kind of more micro level, the kind of letting go piece, I think as women, again, we feel because we can do everything ourselves, that we should do everything ourselves. We have really high expectations of what we can get done, and quite often we're not very good at asking for help. Mm-hmm. So letting go of the idea you need to do it all on your own, I think, is a really big thing. You know, getting to a point in a business where you can get support. If you can get support, go get it. To free yourself up with the space to do what only you can do in your business. You know, your level of your zone of genius, that is the thing that's going to really move the needle for you and really move your business forward. So get help. Also, bringing it back to to-do lists, I once had someone on my course who had something on her to-do list for 3 years that her mother-in-law had asked her to do, and it had never got mentioned again. She hadn't done it, and it was still on her to-do list. So let's let go of things that are on our to-do list that actually are not that important anymore.
Yeah.
And I think we're all very good at adding things on to our to-do lists, but taking things off, not so much. So I really encourage people to look at their to-do lists and evaluate them regularly and just see, what can I let go of? What was important when I wrote it down, but now 2 months later, actually it's not important anymore. Let it go, and see what that does for your mental bandwidth. Makes a big difference. Sorry, there was a lot I just threw at that question.
It's amazing. I love it. And there's, as you're saying that, the question the mother-in-law asked her, it was on a to-do list for 3 years. Actually, it reminded me of something I had on my to-do list for about 6 months, and I was like, maybe I should just go and look at it and see if it's really important still.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned it, it just had a light bulb moment for me go off. Right. I was like, yeah, maybe I need to go let go of it. But
I think you feel guilty every time you see it there as well, doesn't it?
I know. And then you think, just one more thing I've got to do. One more thing I've got to do. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And you're never going to do it. Let's face it. You will never do it because it's not a priority. Mm-hmm. But I think also in so many ways, when we talk about letting go of things, what you said in the beginning about, or you mentioned it, is doing the things that you love. And I think that's very important. So if you have things that is on your to-do list that you don't love doing, maybe let's take a simple example, but maybe you're just starting out in your business now and you're thinking, I've really got to start designing my website. I don't like doing it. I want to do it. I don't like doing it because I've got to learn, I've got to train myself, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you just get somebody to do it for you? Yeah, that's letting go. That's honestly the mental capacity and the relief you're going to get back from just letting that go, and maybe giving it to somebody who loves doing it, giving it to somebody who's got the time, the bandwidth to do it. I think those kind of things as well, recognizing what you love doing and what you don't like doing, letting go of those and see how you can outsource that and how you can get other people to help you with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, along with that as well, I think letting go of what you see other people doing and therefore you think you should be doing, but actually, are they the right thing for you to be doing? So using myself as an example, it's taken me a long time to get here because we don't come at, these things can take time to percolate, but I've just recently made the decision that I'm going to let go of a lot of the social media activity that I thought I should be doing, because actually social media isn't for me where I get my clients. It really isn't. So why am I beating myself up, giving myself a hard time about all the social media that I should be doing, but I'm not? So I've recently made the decision to let go of that. And again, that frees up so much space to be thinking about other things that I have evidence of that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
So again, noticing what works for you and letting go of things that are not working, but giving them a fair chance, but then letting them go and not holding on to things too tightly.
Yeah. And try and do everything. For goodness sake, don't overcomplicate your life.
Yes, well, simplicity all the way. Absolutely.
Exactly. Talk to us about the harness of your productivity superpower. I love how you talk about your superpower. Talk to us about harnessing that superpower.
Yeah. So this actually relates to something I was just saying. So we all share the same productivity superpower, which is very exciting, and it is our own self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, the solution that's going to help you to sort out, to find your own productivity groove, if you like, is not out there, it's inside of you. So if we can harness that awareness of ourselves, and we've talked about this already, when we were talking about energy levels, you were saying about taking a break when you weren't feeling like doing something. The more we can start to notice that and just pay attention to how we're feeling as we move through our days. How are we feeling at different times of day? How are we feeling when we're doing different types of activity? For women, is there a certain time of the month when things are not flowing as easily for you and when you need to retreat a little bit? Building that self-awareness will allow you to design your days and your weeks in a way that is going to really support you in getting things done. And again, quite often when people talk about productivity, the first thing they'll think of or say is about getting out of bed an hour earlier. Like, oh, I'll have to get up at 5 a.m. if I want to be more productive. Well, might work for some people, but if you're not naturally an early bird, that's going to backfire, because chances are you're probably not going to bed any earlier. You're going to end up not at your best anyway at that time of day, and possibly ending up sleep deprived, which is counterproductive. So again, knowing your own tendencies around that kind of thing as well just allows you to relax into accepting who you are and how you work, instead of fighting against yourself the whole time. You know, I see it so often, people thinking they should be doing things in a certain way if they're going to be productive and going to be successful. And then they're trying to, you know, the round peg square hole thing, they're trying to ram themselves into this shape of being and doing stuff that just isn't them. So if we can all harness our own self-awareness, I think that's when things start to feel a lot easier.
Yeah. And you've said it in such a beautiful way, because that's exactly what I experienced when I told you, when I had that light bulb moment of realizing that if I sit in front of my computer and I don't feel like doing something, or I find myself that I'm just in a zone of going, ugh, what am I going to do next? And then I go, okay, move myself away. Because let's face it, when you sit in front of a computer, that's the main part where your energy can get drained instantly. You absorb so much information, you absorb so much content and things that you just immediately feel drained. And when we try and be productive, when your energy is drained, that's like climbing uphill. You know, when having no breath left, really.
Yes, totally.
So it's very much true what you're saying. And I love the fact that you're saying your superpower, because when I discovered that superpower, it made a huge difference, a huge difference. And then also the mindset aspect of not feeling guilty when I felt like walking away from my computer, taking my dog for a walk, you know, just getting in the car and just driving somewhere. And especially these days, you need to get out a little bit. There was one occasion I remember very clearly. I was just sitting in front of my computer and it's like, I'd rather want to go work on my garden. And it was pouring outside. And I was like, I really want to go work in my garden, but it's raining. And I had, you know, my hoodie up and everything. And I was just popping around in my vegetable garden, just working. 15 minutes, I was drenched to the bone, but I loved it. You know, that is something that got me excited.
Yeah.
And as soon as I sat back in front of my computer, obviously after drying off, I felt very productive, and I could continue the rest of the day on that natural high almost.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, yeah, I think there's sort of two parts to it. Well, I'm sure there's more than two parts, but what's just occurring to me now, there's the kind of awareness in the moment, which is what you're describing, where you're giving yourself what you need, having noticed what you need, and then allowing yourself that. And there's also spotting the patterns so that you can be ready for it. I mean, another example for me, I realized, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I'd allowed my calendar to kind of evolve in a way that I wasn't very happy with. So I've always tried to plan my calendar around my cycle, and I actually have my cycle in my calendar so I can see when I'm not going to have very much energy. And in the week when I really needed to be retreating, people had booked themselves in because I had allowed that to happen. And I got to the end of that week and I was absolutely on my knees and I felt awful. And I just thought, no, Louise, you need to change something here. So I've gone back into my scheduling software and I've blocked out those weeks so that I don't mind still seeing people, but I want to be in control of it. I don't want just appointments appearing in my calendar in that 1 week of the month. So I've sorted that out, just again from the self-awareness of knowing myself and then giving myself what I need. So it's noticing it in the moment and then seeing what you can do to plan for the patterns that you spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Self-awareness is the best thing you can do for yourself. And I think particularly for us as female entrepreneurs, because there's so much emotion that goes on in our lives, you know, family-based, business-based. And if you can be in that self-awareness zone of realizing what is triggering you, where's your energy high, where's your energy low, how can you know, complete your calendar and put that all in perspective and work with that, everything just starts flowing and it just really starts falling into place, which I absolutely love. And that's why I love having this conversation with you, because There's so many things that we kind of think about, but we don't have the words to say it. And you just beautifully explained it here for us today. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Before we go though, you've got an amazing freebie for the audience. And I think everybody now who's been listening and watching this going, oh my gosh, so many golden nuggets. How do I put it all together? So you've got an amazing freebie that people can use. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so the freebie is called From Big Idea to Inspired Action, and it's a powerful planning workbook to help you get stuff done with less stress and more ease. So what it is essentially is it's like a really simple step-by-step kind of DIY version of the sorts of things that happen in the Make It Happen Club, where you will reconnect in with your vision, you'll identify your goals, and then you'll start to break those goals down into manageable, actionable steps to allow you to move forward. Again, with an eye on what else is going on in your life and the support that you might need, the obstacles that might trip you up along the way. It encompasses all of that in a really lovely, clear kind of few pages workbook that you can just print it off, make yourself a nice cup of tea, give yourself half an hour, and you'll really be able to start to see how you can move forward with your goals. So yeah, I would love people to grab a free copy of that if they'd like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for making that available, because I think now in particular with the new year, everybody wants to set up their goals, want to think about what they're doing. So this is the perfect time to give that. And thank you so much for making that available.
Oh,
before we go, is there any last tips you want to give the audience?
Oh, great question. Do you know what just popped into my head then? I think, again, coming back to the definition of productivity, the first place to start when it comes to productivity is your vision. So the more you can connect in with your vision, the more productive you can be in pursuit of that vision. And that's going to keep you on track with doing what's important rather than doing all the things. So yeah, people don't always think vision and productivity in the same sentence, but they need to be married together. It's absolutely crucial. So yes. Go look at your
keep
vision.
The focus.
Yes.
Amazing. Oh, well, Louise, thank you so much for being here. I absolutely loved the whole chat we've had. And I'm sure that the audience made some notes that they can take away. And obviously for you listening, go and grab that free, because I know it's going to help you so much planning for the year ahead, planning for whatever you want to achieve, whatever you want to do. It's going to make a huge difference. So don't delay. Go and get that right now. The link is below in the show notes. And then also, if you want to get in contact with Louise, if you've got any additional questions for her, I'm sure she would love to have a conversation with you. So if you want to have a chat with her, her website will also be in the show notes, so you can go and get in contact with her through that. But Louise, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure you and I are going to be in touch fairly soon again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Henry. I've loved this conversation. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. Speak soon.
Bye.